Okay, so here's the story. Yeah, I know. Here's the story. An anime channel guy with 30 specific anime channels.
He's got 4. Anime IRL.
So he makes 2 political-esque shorts, basically shitting on, the right wing. Get him, fellas, we hate him. And he got a lot of pushback from whatever communities he got sent those shorts, We made a video. We just find it kind of cringe. He does that every once in a while. It's his prerogative.
People. They're all anime people. Just the people that gave him the pushback.
Well, yeah, you assume it's part of his community.
And they're normal people. They're just normal anime people that were like, what the fuck, bro?
Well, I don't know who they were. All that matters is this is his basically response. Now I can just sum it up for you right now. It is 24 minutes of him saying, I'm right. Anybody who doesn't think like me is stupid and possibly a fascist. That's every leftist.
That's what it all boils down to.
Over the duration of my illustrious career as a content creator, I've received a lot of dumb comments. And that's just the part of the job. People are gonna feel a certain way, they're gonna say certain things. Most of the time, it's gonna be kind of silly. If you don't want to be perceived by millions of people and therefore forced to understand the net level of intelligence of the internet, this isn't really the job for you. However, amongst all of the dumb comments I've ever received, the dumbest one I've ever received, which is one I receive quite often, mind you, is keep politics out of anime.
And I will preface this with, when they talk about that, it's usually the Western type. There's a million people that say, keep your Western politics out of my Japanese politics.
Even the Japs say, we don't want the Western shit.
We don't want the woke over here. Do not talk about Trump, unless it's a Trump reference, like in Baki.
And while on the surface level, this comment might seem like it makes a fair amount of sense, a lot of people use anime and fictional pieces of media as an escape from the real-life horrors of the world. And thus the idea that somebody like me, who makes their entire living talking about fictional pieces of media, interrupting these conversations about fictional pieces of media with real-life lessons based off political things that are happening right now in our very own real world, might seem a bit jarring. However, if you literally just peel one layer off the onion, you'll realize that the ability to separate politics from anime is not up to me as a consumer. That is up to the author creating the piece of fiction.
It is up to the consumer, yes.
It is up to the consumer.
It's as simple as, when I see a Jackson Pollock painting, I see a bunch of splats and dots and bullshit. Somebody pays thousands of dollars for that, and they like it. Something like Daredevil. Fisk looks at a blank canvas that's white, and it's supposed to have a deep meaning. At least to other people. For him, it has a backstory meaning.
That is up to the author creating the piece of fictional material. See, I don't interject political talk into a video about Naruto because I want to talk politics. I insert pieces.
He literally does go, oh yeah, Donzo, I mean Trump, he does it for jokes.
I mean our dictator, yeah.
Yeah.
He does it for jokes, but it's not jokes.
Yeah, he does it for jokes, but it's not jokes. It's just kind of something, you can't say you don't do it.
They're jabs. They're boxing jabs.
It is, this is my political belief. I'm just expressing it. You're allowed to express it.
Literary understanding of what I'm talking about based off what I believe Kishimoto was trying to say. Clone of Robin and stopped his fall using his thorn-based devil fruit lets the Jarl know that he only has 10 seconds to start burning some books. Like it's Fahrenheit 451. Or, what the American government currently wishes it was doing right now.
It's not a direct comparison to what Oda is trying to say. You're just adding that on.
No piece of media is so fictional that it is not based off anything that exists here on Earth. In an anime, more often than not, a lot of the themes derived from that story are based off real-life things, mostly political, that happened right here on Earth. So when I'm told to keep politics out of anime, my legitimate only response to that comment is that it's not up to me to keep politics out of anime. You're just too stupid to realize that politics have always been a part of anime. And today, I'd like to elucidate that point. Because today, I want to talk about some of the biggest anime on Earth and the political lessons they were trying to teach you. Because today, we're talking politics have always been a part of anime. You were just too stupid to notice.
Nobody's smart but me!
Below. See, the irony of anime's explosion in popularity over the last couple of years is that for some reason, a dark underbelly of the anime community has appeared. A dark underbelly that not only loves anime, but also holds far-right ideals, which is incredibly ironic and kind of the reason we're making today's video, because almost literally every single anime that has any kind of semblance of political themes rallies so hard against these very same viewpoints that a lot of anime fans espouse. And thus today,
it's because it's a good story. People can enjoy good stories. That's why the hard right people I don't think Asmongold.
He's not.
I think Asmongold's pretty neutral. I think he just has takes.
He just has dumb
You know,
takes
I
like
think-
everybody.
I
You're
think-
having a dumb take right now, dude.
I think people are just normal, and you just want to generalize. They're on the right if they're not with you.
Stories to me that felt so clearly and obviously political that missing the point means that you either have no historical knowledge whatsoever or the reading comprehension of a third grader. Attack on Titan. See, Attack on Titan to some is a skin-based mech story. A story about little people against big people. The Scouts versus the Titans. And the most important thing that a lot of people take away from the story is the fact that it was kind of cool to watch Levi slice up the Beast Titan. Oh, and yeah, Erwin's speech was cool as well. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that everybody who watched the show wasn't able to pick up on the total shift that happened when Aaron and the rest of the crew were finally able to realize that they were on Parody Island, which is apparently not the whole world. Because regardless of whether or not you're able to pick up on the political tones of Attack on Titan, anybody with a fully functioning brain can pick up on the fact that it goes from a story about battling against Titans to a story about battling against the world. However, it is at that moment in time that a lot of Attack on Titan fans lost the plot of this story entirely. See, without doing any...
I actually would like to see the receipts for how retarded these people are that they can't see.
Well, yeah, he's not gonna whip out any. Like,
I know, he should've.
comments. We already figured that one out.
He should have ran receipts and showed people these people actually exist.
Yeah, because they do. You got one. You can catch maybe one or two of them.
The normal people that
the bigger
can't
you
catch,
are, the more retards attack you.
Yeah, the bigger people that can't catch the actual meaning behind stories.
Yeah, because there are
Good
legitimately
stories.
dumb motherfuckers. We know one. He's media illiterate as fuck.
It is incredibly easy to deduce that Attack on Titan is a story about a minority group of people who were vilified for the actions of their ancestors. That's easy to comprehend, right? The citizens of Parody Island, also known as the Eldians, are descendants of Ymir, and thus every single one of them technically has the ability to turn into a Titan, an ability that the Eldians use to essentially take over the world. And thus, because nobody had the technology to kill Titans, and only the Eldians had the ability to turn into Titans, they were able to rule the world unchallenged for a very long time. Now, unfortunately for everybody who existed under the Eldians, they weren't the best rulers, and thus because a couple of key Eldians felt empathy for those they were ruling over rather cruelly, they betrayed the Eldian cause, and slowly but surely the Eldians were taken out of power. And as recompense for the sins of the ruling Eldians, all Eldians, after they lost the war against the people they'd ruled over for hundreds if not thousands of years, were stripped of basically all of their rights, moved into ghettos, and treated as second-rate citizens. And while some of you might be thinking, well, Nick, how can you make the idea that some people can turn into giants political? To which I would respond to by saying that Isayama so clearly modeled the Eldian experience off the Jewish experience of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s that it's almost offensive.
Sort of, but it can also be equated to, if you want it to, black people in slavery. The idea that you did something horrible in your past and that you have to pay for it in your future and your kids. Gabi is, ally, a literal ally in that department, where she is the good monster.
Most of the kids who live here at the stables lost our parents 4 years ago.
You haven't acknowledged your guilt yet, have you? You people can cover it up and try to forget, but you've committed horrific atrocities against the entire world. There's only one way for an Eldian to start down the path towards atonement, and that's to recognize that you are tainted with sin.
One's
You
actually,
equate it now to white guilt.
yeah, this one's actually more recent than the one you're talking about. His is more prevalent because it's much more hefty. The
No,
old
you just
Jews.
modernized the white guilt.
But if you want to talk about a recent one, it's the white guilt. Gabi is the ultimate white guilt poster child.
I'm sorry I'm white. I'm sorry I'm an Eldian.
Yeah, I'm sorry I exist.
Are you saying this because it has to do with why we lost our parents?
Of course it does. Even if you act like a saint your whole life, you'll never escape from the shadow of Eldia's sins.
Oh, but Nick, the Jews couldn't turn into giants. Yeah, I'm well aware. I'm 5'7". See, if some of you have ever asked the question, why do people hate the Jews so much? It's a complicated question, but it really boils down to 3 big reasons. 1, Christians, historically not that chill, and historically even less...
He does not talk about Muslims in this
Yeah,
description.
no religion is chill at all. He did choose to attack the Christians because he knew
He chose to attack
that
the
Muslims
whites,
would-
or the mostly whites.
Yeah, that the Muslims were going to cook him in the comments, yeah.
Oh, when you tell them you don't believe in their savior. 2. Technically, Jews never had a home country, a place to call their own. They were nomadic for thousands of years, and people didn't like nomads. They still don't. Go ask 95% of European people how they feel about the Romani. And 3, and this was a big one in the early 1900s, the Bible, yes, like the Christian Catholic Bible, states that you are not able to charge interest on a loan. Deuteronomy 23:19-20 explicitly forbade charging interest on loans. Specifically, and I'm going to read it here, you shall not charge interest on loans to your brother, interest on money, interest on food, interest on anything that is lent for interest. People who believed in the Bible, be they Christians or Catholics, weren't able to get into this new hot and ridiculously profitable idea of banking. And thus, you know who did get into banking? Jewish people, by and large. And because of this, a fair amount of Jewish people got wealthy off the back of Christian people defaulting on their loans. And boom, through genuinely no fault of the Jewish people, simply because they could get into a job that Christian people couldn't so long as they were actually listening to the thing that they're supposed to listen to, a Jewish ruling class appeared. Now, in actuality,
That's what we call an eat the rich situation. That if you're a leftist, are actually evil motherfuckers. They're all evil. If you have $1 billion, you're evil. If you have $1 million, you're evil. That's just how it works.
appeared. Now, in actuality, it wasn't a Jewish ruling class, but when a bank forecloses on somebody's home, rarely is that person as upset with the institution as they are with the people who they see when dealing with said institution.
We're all feeling the economy's vengeance because of materialistic heathens who did stupid things with their money. Do you understand, son?
Yeah, I think I get it.
Do not listen to the Wall Street brokers, for they are the ones who put us in this situation. Fat cats with corporate greed. They are the ones who knowingly drove us down this pathway of doom.
They must have gone somewhere. The answer is obvious, my friends. It is the Jews. Covetous Jews who have taken all our money and hoarded it for themselves. Hidden all the cash in some secret Jew cave that they built, probably back in the early 60s.
It's easier to yell and direct your anger at a person with a face than it is at an entire institution. And thus fascists throughout the 20s, 30s, and 40s were able to take this hatred towards the Jews, especially after the collapse of the German economy after World War I, and banned all of that hatred towards the minority group, which was the Jews, thus unifying fascist Germany under one belief, that the collapse of the German economy was because of the Jews. And thus the Jews were stripped of everything they had, specifically on one night, which in German is known as Kristallnacht, called so because on this night German citizens took to the street and broke the glass that was on the forefront of all Jewish companies, like their big old windows. After this, Jews were stripped of their companies, stripped of their homes, put into ghettos, sent to concentration camps, given yellow stars of David to wear on their clothing so everybody would know that they were Jewish. And if they were ever found without said stars, they were either punished or killed. And this
The Eldians have armbands. He doesn't show a picture.
He does.
Does he?
Yeah.
This is literally exactly what happens in Attack on Titan. Not only are the Eldians directed to live in the ghetto, but they're also given
right
yellow badges to identify
Oh, well, he said badges.
themselves as Eldians. The technology used in the war
Also, if you notice, it's a star. That would be the thing I focused on the most.
is to identify themselves as Eldians. The technology used in the war that takes place at the end of Attack on Titan all matches that of a World War II era. And the literal only difference is that the Eldians have the capacity to fight back against this fascism. And if some of you are thinking, well, that's a pretty big difference and thus this isn't all that topical, the literal response from the Eldians to a fascist genocide of their people is Eren wiping out 80% of the population. So in turn, a genocide for your genocide. But for those of you who are paying attention to the post-credit sequence of the anime, you'll see that the world bounces back from this genocide, but is once again thrown into chaos in war. Because the idea of Attack on Titan isn't whether or not Eren did the right thing. The through line of Attack on Titan is that the fascist suppression of one minority group to unify everybody else in a singular cause only ever leads to bloodshed, and that bloodshed accomplishes nothing. The concentration camps didn't get rid of the Jews. Eren's purge of 80% of the population didn't get rid of all of Eldia's enemies. Time and time again, even though it's been proving that pointing all of your hatred towards one entity is the best way to unify people, the unity achieved through that hatred never accomplishes anything. And if you're thinking to yourself,
He doesn't give real world examples of this specific thing, but a real world example are two guys, Osama bin Laden and Hitler. They had everybody band together, unified to fight. It doesn't last forever, because now there's people out there saying Osama bin Laden was right, holy shit.
TikTok users in the US are sympathizing with him.
Reading this letter, it becomes apparent to me that the actions of 9/11 and those acts committed against the USA and its people were all just the buildup of our government failing other nations.
Human figures that actually become anti-martyrs.
Oh, well, Nick, that's a lesson from 80 years ago. No, it's really not. It's a lesson as pertinent today as it was when my grandmother was fleeing Austria. If you ever find yourself listening to something and it feels like for some reason these people keep picking on one relatively small group of people and they won't stop picking at that scab, that's fascism. If they start taking people from their homes without due process because of who they are and sending them to other countries, maybe to, oh, I don't know, camps. If you can be judged, expelled, and treated as a secondary citizen based off your religion, race, or sexual orientation, how is that fundamentally different from anything that my grandmother had to flee from in the 40s?
You're gonna equate being put in a camp, experimented on, gassed, and murdered, watched your family die, possibly
don't
rape.
forget the rape.
Yeah, but possibly a shit ton of rapes, because who cares about the Jews in Germany? 1940s, nobody. You're gonna equate that to getting arrested for being an immigrant, an illegal immigrant.
And being a trans person, that is not the same.
Not the same
It's
at
not
all.
the same as getting genocided.
There's not even, you can't even equate the same thing to gays, because there's at least no camps. They did get beat, but they did get beat. No question there.
What's your name?
Seda.
Seda what? You have a first and last name?
Sam.
Seda Sam?
Yes.
Where are you from?
Where I was born or where I'm from?
Where are you born?
Thailand.
You've been deported before from the United States?
No.
Never been deported?
I've been in the system before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you been charged with
Charged with?
before?
I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna talk to my lawyer.
Yeah. Are you a citizen?
My mom's a citizen.
Your mother's a citizen?
Yes.
But you're not?
Nope.
So it's a wild statement.
And
he's
that's why I
speaking-
said that both those takes, or that take, is in bad faith to Jews.
I know he's speaking on his emotional side of the Jewish department. I don't know how you would equate your grandmother's pain to. We're not even Jewish, not even fucking close. I don't even know why the Jews are a race. I'm that stupid, but I can tell you right now that I believe the Holocaust exists, and I would never equate it to getting arrested for being an immigrant.
Never equate it to
Or
a guy
illegal.
chopping his dick off and wanting to wear girl clothes.
I wouldn't equate it to that either. That's a whole different struggle.
But since we're talking about fascist governments in anime, let's talk about 86, one of my favorite anime of all time. See, 86, like many other mech anime, falls into a category literally named political. However, even with the categorization of the anime being called political, a lot of people miss the point. See,
most mech anime are inherently political because they're always fighting a mech from a different country or working with a different country.
Because there's strategy to the mech.
Is a mech story, and like a lot of other mech stories, it's loosely based around the concept of Europe, but if they had big old robots. Now, this story is based in a country known as the Republic of San Magnolia, who's at war with the Giadian Empire. However, over the course of this 9-year-long war, the Republic of San Magnolia has suffered devastating losses to its autonomous robot legions. Thus, they have to develop a different kind of autonomous unit known as the Juggernaut. And these Juggernauts are supposedly, at least so far as the public understands, are controlled by somebody known as a handler. However, in actuality, these Juggernauts are not autonomous, and rather they're piloted by citizens of the 86th District of the Republic of San Magnolia. But why? Why are these people particularly putting on the front lines of this mech-based battle? Well, because the citizens of the 86th District are not Alba. Now, the Alba are citizens of the Republic of San Magnolia who have blue hair and blue eyes, and thus anybody who does not have those attributes is considered a second-class citizen. And thus, when they're shoved into these juggernauts and sent to the front lines, when they die, the government of the Republic of San Magnolia states that there was no casualties from their side, not only stripping all of the people in the 86th district of their humanity, but also controlling information flow to the mass public by never reporting on their deaths. And while to some of you this may seem like a crazy anime-based concept,
blonde hair, blue eyes? I should be recruiting them.
Happens right now. The Alba are the Aryans, a German ideology born in the 30s and 40s by the bad Germans, that the purest kind of human was one with blonde hair and blue eyes, an Aryan. And while within the confines of...
Now, the example he's about to give has literally nothing to do with that. That's the wild take. It literally has... It's going to be a thing that has nothing to do with it.
Germany, those with more Aryan features would sometimes be taken out of the front lines of battles or be given higher positions, referred to as the Übermacht. It's not the most succinct comparison. Rather, if you're trying to draw ties to 86's political themes, it's actually more relevant today, here, in America. 30% of enlisted women in the US military forces are black. 30%, almost a third. But why would a racial group that constitutes really only about 13% of the American population represent 30% of enlisted women in the US military? Is it because black women feel the call to the military more than any other race of woman? No. See, there's a prevailing joke in American media that when army commercials start putting white guys again, you know they're getting desperate. And that's because the majority of military propaganda and the push to get people to join the military is actually directed at black and brown Americans. But
it's pointed at poor people. That's what it is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The answer is it's pointed at poor people. See, poor people get the opportunity to say, "Yo, bro, do you want to do this? Or do you want to go work at McDonald's? With this, if you live and do your 2 years, we will set you up."
It is a minority group back in the day, but it is poor people now.
Well, lessened options in career paths and financial aid, and heightened presence of military recruiters in black and brown majority high school areas creates a systematic, essentially assembly line of people who believe that their only way out of their bad situation is through the military.
So what would be the alternative? The alternative for black people, if we're being extra racist, is join the military, which you could fight and die for your country, noble cause and whatnot, depending on what you're doing. Hopefully not another Vietnam. That sucks. Or you could go into basketball, do a sport or something, get a scholarship, become the next Michael Jordan. That's also an awesome idea. Millionaires work from the...
Yeah, that was that shit,
from the
dude.
Gym to the billionaire parties, the Diddy parties.
From the gym to the rim.
Yeah, from the gym to the rim jobs.
Yeah, dude, when he literally said this.
So you have those two good options, well, minus the Diddy party, versus, you know what? I could just go sell drugs on the street.
Which most people do. You know
I could go be a gang member and get that quick, easy cash. I can pull a Tupac. Tupac has a song. So which one would you equate to be better? Going into the military or going into the workforce of the gangsters? And
selling crack.
Sell crack and murder other black people. Because that's another statistic you don't want to touch. It's all about what you feel like doing.
That's done on purpose. But even if you don't want to talk about modern day politics, both America and Japan have a sordid past of using who the government identified as the non-desirables to fight on the front line without giving them any credit. We'll see whether it was slaves fighting for freedom in either the Revolutionary or Civil Wars, or the legions of all black, all Native American, or all Hispanic battlements fighting in World War I and World War II that got
How did he get this information if nobody talks about it?
No credit for their accomplishments on the battlefields, or Japan's history of using Chinese or Korean slaves, yep, you heard me right, slaves, to build Japan's battlements, most specifically in World War II. Yeah, the 40s. Acknowledgement for the success of the war effort never trickles back to the minorities who made it happen.
All right, then. Human shield up front, then Operation Get Behind the Darkest. Remember, Human Shield, protect our tanks and planes, too.
And if you don't think that's relevant today, did you know that in World War II, the war where code breaking and espionage became one of the most important facets?
World War II, not today. Okay, he did not He did not say that right.
Successful war effort, we used Native Americans, specifically Navajos, to communicate with each other across battle lines because there was no way for people, even if they did intercept the message, to decode Navajo. Did you also know, in one of the most famous photos taken of all time, the raising of the American flag in Iwo Jima, one of the 6 men seen raising that flag was a private first class by the name of Ira Hayes, a Pima Indian, a man who in this photo stood as the physical representation of the Native American effort in World War II. However, among our current administration's push to erase any and all DEI, anything in the government, they've purged any and all information that existed in the Defense Department, either about the Navajo Code Talkers or Private First Class Ira Hayes.
I would like to know his sources for this. If he would link that in his description, that would be fantastic.
Dude, I can't believe
that sounds so ridiculously stupid that it's crazy. Minus his word. Notice there weren't any like newspaper clippings of like
Trump
words.
gets rid of the people in history.
Of like words. No, hold on. For instance, whenever that Salvadorian guy got deported, they said immediately that his paperwork was fucked.
They've purged any and all information that existed in the Defense Department, either about the Navajo Code Talkers or Private First Class Ira Hayes. Why? Well, because why would they get credit for the war effort? Why would their contribution be acknowledged?
Oh, Nick, what about the other 5 Marines who lifted up the flag at Iwo Jima?
There's also articles about all of them. But when you start focusing on the one Pima Indian and decide that his article needs to be gone, that's controlling information. That's the fascist playbook. And that's what 86 is about. Erasing any and all acknowledgement of a minority group fighting on the front lines and dying for your country is literally the core messaging of 86.
It's not fascism to get rid of information that doesn't quite matter. It's just kind of mean. No, specifically because you know about it and you're spreading the story, that means, and you're allowed to spread the story, that means it's not fascist.
Not about Germany, it's about what's happening right now. There wasn't Jews fighting for Germany. There wasn't black men fighting for Germany. There wasn't gay men fighting for Germany.
That is fucking wild.
I call some serious,
I call shenanigans. Like there's not a shit ton of gay guys that hid their gayness. I don't know if they got the blacks to fight for them. If they did, they were definitely war slaves. And that they didn't have Jews working for them. The wild part was the gays.
Part was the gays, like there was no gay.
No gays, you just eliminated their entire existence.
Oh, but Nick, 86 came out before this current administration.
I'm aware this isn't the first time it's happened, and this is not just an American-based issue. Remember, I just said Japan also had a sordid past with doing this kind of stuff. But enough about political anime, those are way too easy to understand that they're political. Let's talk about One Piece, a straight-up shonen. One Piece is one of, if not the most popular anime and manga of all time, and thus as it is an incredibly popular IP, it's bound to bring a lot of eyes to it. And honestly, I don't know if that's for the best, because if there was a missing the point medal, the One Piece fandom would get it. Now it's important to note that this video is only about you if you're feeling attacked right now. I fully acknowledge that this video is going out to more people than it probably even is.
Because then they formulate their own ideas, and he doesn't like their ideas. He wants to gatekeep One Piece. You didn't even watch it for the longest time. We were late to One Piece. We watched it in 2018 back when Whole Cake Island popped up and we knew Wano was coming, at least in the English dub. You were even like later to the party. To be the guy to say the right-wing people really shouldn't be watching One Piece is fucking crazy. And there's people glazing him in the comments for statements like these, which are just hateful comments. You know that those 2 shorts had him boiling if he's got to go out and say, I don't like you guys, and I don't like the way you communicate online. And even if you are a fan of the material I like, you don't see it the same way I do. Yeah. Therefore, you suck. You're stupid. I hate you. And he's got plenty more vocabulary words in his leftist back pocket, but he doesn't want to go ahead and act too spiteful.
You can't be normal and watch One Piece is what he's saying.
I'm not saying you, the average viewer of One Piece or this video is stupid. This shoe I keep talking about fits. Maybe consider putting it on. One Piece to a...
See? There it is. It's just
more gatekeeping. Hate and gatekeeping.
Shockingly large amount of people is a story about pirates. And that's apparently it. And while yes, I will acknowledge the fact that One Piece is a story about pirates, that's like saying Star Wars is a story about monks.
Palpatine snaking his way through the Senate and all of that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about the politics, whether or not you like it or not. And then you got the hardcore Star Wars fans. Like, I didn't watch the Clone Wars, but I thought it was ugly. You cannot deny the politics. But you don't want to go into that.
See, One Piece is a story about a boy who wants more than anything to be the freest person alive. And in order to achieve that, that boy identifies that he has to become the king of the pirates. But why would freedom be such a large talking point in the One Piece universe?
More specifically, a pirate is a bad guy. He equates a pirate to not being a good person.
ホーディーと戦うなと伝言したのは闇雲には戦うなという意味じゃ。そうではなく、この魚人島を救うヒーローになってくれ。
ヒーロー？やだ！
何を？
俺たちは海賊だぞ！ヒーローは大好きだけど、なるのは嫌だ！例えば、肉があるだろ？海賊は肉で宴をやるけど、ヒーローは肉を人に分け与えるやつのことだ。俺は肉を食いたい！
That's what Luffy is about. He sees something he wants to do and he goes and does it. If somebody fucks with Luffy, then he will get fucked up. That is the only time he ever fucks with the government, is whenever they specifically grab his person. He doesn't directly challenge the government until they kidnap his friend. Other than that, he would have just left Water 7 with Robin, and then they would have just followed his ass and fought him. But that's nowhere near as impactful as watching him burn the flag. It's a demonstration of his resolve. It's not, I want to fight the government because the government bad. It's the government fucked me over.
The government's dicks, and now I want to fuck them up.
Yeah. At this specific moment, at this point in the story, it is time to throw hands with the government. There's no other time where he goes up against the world government specifically because they're assholes. The only other time he goes up against the world government in One Piece that I can think of
CP9.
past... No, that CP9 is Robin, the Marineford. But he's not there to beat the government. He's there to kidnap, Ace. Yeah, to save Ace from execution because he is in fact a pirate.
But he's still not free to do whatever he wants. See, the overarching tone of the One Piece universe is that nobody is free. And ironically, there's never been a better time to talk about this outside of maybe Robin's backstory than currently where we are in the One Piece anime right now, which is Egghead Island. See, One Piece isn't a story about pirates. It's a story about a boy rebelling against a fascist government. A government that manipulates the flow of information.
The only reason he's fighting the government now is because they're literally picking up the gloves against him. Like, for the longest time, they just didn't do anything about him. It's one of those weird things where even though they knew that he had the Mika Mika fruit, and they did.
So it wasn't always like that, because he just came out with the Mika
Yeah, that's a Gear 5 retcon slip-up kind of thing where the government should have been on his ass the entire time, but they weren't. But the only reason he's fighting it now is because they are actively trying to kill him.
A government that manipulates the flow of information to its mass public. A government that's erased 100 years of history off the map and that makes it illegal to research those 100 years. A government that wiped Ohara, a peaceful land filled with scientists, doctors, and researchers, off the map because they looked into that blank period. And a government that's currently trying to do that exact same thing with Egghead Island. The government of the One Piece universe does not allow total freedom, and thus the only way to learn about the blank century is to find 4 incredibly remote road poneglyphs, use those...
The information also holds the One Piece, which is why it's very important. It shows the directions directly to Laugh Tale.
Yeah, only Robin cares about the rogue poneglyphs.
Only Robin cares about the Void Century. That is her goal, not Luffy's.
All the while, the government of the One Piece universe props up the same 19 families who bent a knee to Emu 800 or 900 years ago to exist as consequence-free celestial dragons who are able to do whatever they want, as they exist as the upper crust, the top 0.0001% of the universe, made fat on infinite resources and free and unfettered access to slaves.
Yeah, and if Luffy never met one, he would have never punched one in the face. He would have just walked on by and
never
knew how bad it was. It's the fact that he actually met one and then was confronted with one and then he punched it in the face, like any normal human being that exists. That was a big moment for One Piece, but not specifically for Luffy. Luffy does not give a fuck. If he sees another one of those people, he's just like, oh, you're like one of those other dickheads. He's not going, oh, you fascist piece of shit.
Such free and unfettered access to slaves, mind you, that there's slave auctions. And should you ever break the rules of the government and try to live a free life, there's an entire island dedicated to housing all those prisoners. But Nick, what could any of that be about? about? Oh, I don't know, but does the limitation of access to information sound familiar to anybody?
And in this letter, he says, quote, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. That was him in this letter to the House Judiciary. The White House defending their position, a statement to CNN today saying that during that time, they believe the administration, they said, encouraged responsible actions to protect public health safety.
Does Piers Morgan, as a character, needing to stay on
It's big news, Morgans. Get it right.
run from the government and thus having a flying ship that the government can't get access to so we can write true news stories sound remotely familiar to anybody? The inability to report on specific facts under the fear that if you do report on those facts, you will be punished by the government. That very same government that doesn't seem to care about those at the bottom of the equation and instead dedicates all of its resources to propping up those at the top? No? That doesn't sound familiar to you at all? Then what about PBS and NPR getting their funding cut? Because they...
I've never heard of PBS if it's not for kids. Well, there's this thing called Grounded News. Now, I don't know if they're affiliated with anything, and I'm not a sponsor by any means.
Then what about PBS and NPR getting their funding cut? Because they wrote and reported on stories that didn't cast the best light on our president. What about the fact that the stock market was intentionally crashed so a bunch of people in the middle class could lose their retirement funds, so our president could tell a bunch of his billionaire buddies when to reinvest?
That sucks. You know, insider trading just happens to be on both sides.
It's a both sids thing. Insider trading is
like
a
he made a
both
meme
sides
coin.
thing.
He made a meme coin. That sucks.
That was for fun.
I know, meme coins scam people. It's not a good thing. There's nobody that looked at that meme coin, and I'm not talking about what he's talking about at the moment. I even warned our grandmother not to buy that meme coin just in case she thought of it. Insider trading is a bad thing all around. A government employee is supposed to have the salary of around $250,000, maybe 3, 4. Some of them got millions. How does that happen? They got stocks in specific places.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, like and this is the thing. It's like people think that everyday people are stupid. I'm like, do you all really think that people don't see this shit? Like,
they sit on a committee, they get information about a drug or a contract or a thing. They immediately make a call. The stockbroker changes things and their portfolio swells.
Explodes. It explodes.
What are we doing?
And you're doing this on public trust.
Right.
On like taxpayer finance, public, facilities. Like it, of course.
You're regulating the market that you're trading on.
Exactly. And
you
like
run the casino.
And then we're supposed to act like money doesn't only corrupts Republicans? Give me a fucking break.
Literally bragging on a hot mic that a bunch of his billionaire buddies made billions of dollars based off you losing your entire portfolio. Does that sound like the kind of government that Luffy would want to exist under? Does it sound like the kind of system that Dragon and Ivankov would want to live under?
It's better than the system they live in. They wouldn't give a fuck. They would be happy living in one of the good islands. If they stayed on one of the islands that they saved, they'd be happy there. But the journey's not over yet. It could be the shittiest, poorest country, yet Luffy will find a way to chill there. And that's the truth for Jinbei, too. As long as you're not whipping me or telling me I have a different name, Jinbei's good.
Jinbei and the Sun Pirates would want to live under. Because if some of you are thinking, well, Nick, at least there's not slaves yet. Yeah, there is. Because as we said, every
Hispanic with a pulse is going to El Salvador, according to every leftist ever.
I cannot believe that he equated an immigrant going to
generally speaking
Mexico or wherever.
Generally speaking, when you go to prison, you waive most of your rights as a human being. Worse is you're being sent back to where you came from, and where you came from sucks dick.
It's so bad faith.
Yeah, and some of them being gang members and rapists. Like Dr. Phil going, you know you have a rap sheet that says rape on it, right?
ICE agents arrested multiple individuals across several states, including a Turkish national in New York, labeled a known or suspected terrorist. Also in New York, agents took into custody an MS-13 gang member and 3 men in Buffalo with convictions for child sex offenses, rape, and stolen property. Officers in other cities also detained members of notorious gangs such as the Tren de Aragua and Barrio Azteca, as well as fugitives wanted for crimes ranging from wire fraud to murder.
El Salvador, what do you think they're doing with those people down there? I'll tell you right now, it's not patty cake, and it's definitely not just sitting around. And if you can't understand that Luffy and the Strawhats stand in complete and total opposition of all of this, then you're missing the point.
Sanji, by all accounts, stands against the concept of transgenderism because he likes women.
Yeah,
you would not
Sanji
like
is
Sanji if he was a real
normal.
person. He would walk up to your trans friend and go, ew. He'd still make her food, but he would not be happy about it, just like any other dude that he's ever made food.
Leave me alone, you weirdos! I already told you I'm not into that kind of crap!
My dearest Nami, my sweet Robin, it's been a while. How are the two of you doing? As for me, I'm, well, how to put this?
Don't run, sugar! You can't fight it! You're one of us now! Oh yeah, fat chance!
Now, you want to talk about the specific Straw Hats. Guess who's all about that capitalism, baby? She's working for that gold. Them berries are hers. If she can find a way to make money, she's going to be the queen of OnlyFans, the Amaranth of OnlyFans, the Bella Thorne of OnlyFans.
水に浸かると力出ないもんね。あれ、お金取ろうかしら。まさかの。
Then you're missing the point of One Piece. Because One Piece is not a story about pirates, because Luffy is literally a reincarnation of Nika, the god of freeing slaves. He has with him a researcher and archaeologist from an island wiped out for doing research, whose main goal in life, and therefore one of the main goals of One Piece, is to uncover what happened in the Void Century. And One Piece probably does the best job out of any fictional piece of literature to show just how far a government will go to suppress messaging they don't want out there, which will be made so painfully clear in the Egghead Island arc that if you don't get it, genuinely trade your brain in for a motor. But enough about One Piece. What about the story that I built my entire career on? Naruto. Another story that on the surface may just seem like a story about ninjas. And you know what? For a large majority of the show, it is just that. That is, of course, until the character of Danzo was introduced. See, I've been very vocal about the fact that Danzo is my favorite antagonist of all of Naruto. I believe he's the most grounded, realistic, and unique antagonist in all of Naruto. And that's because Danzo is supposed to be a representation of career politicians. A representation of what happens when lifelong politicians get their way. A narcissist who justifies all of his evil actions under the premise of the end is worth the means. And when the scale of what you're making decisions for is so wide as an entire city, nay, an entire country, a lot of means can be justified. See, whether it's Danzo massacring an entire minority group in the Uchiha to stamp out any possible dissent without ever possibly trying to have a conversation with them about their legitimate gripes.
They planned on wiping out all of Konoha, taking the nuclear power. And
we said this before, but they were not being talked down to anybody.
Yeah, the person that was supposed to talk to them and talk them down was Hiruzen. It was not Danzo's job because he's not the Hokage. Hiruzen just did a shit job. They don't have like a moment with Obito where, well, if they ever just talked to me, I would.
Wasn't his name Fuga or something?
Yeah, I would have been totally cool with just talking this shit out and getting down to the bottom of it. They planned on murdering everybody. Danzo was justified. That was a bad example of how Danzo is evil. Ready to take down the suppressive state.
The Akatsuki versus the Hidden Rain because the combined force of the two of them may one day pose a legitimate threat to the Hidden Leaf, or turning the entirety of Konoha against a child to unify.
That was just Hiruzen. A lack of Hiruzen glaze. A lack of Hiruzen being a father figure.
That was just Hiruzen and Minato.
If they would have put Naruto in the forefront, put him on his shoulders, and just were nice to Naruto, if they said, don't be mean to Naruto, it would have been fine. But that's not what happened. He never said, yo, take it easy on the old boy. They're never like, oh my god, why are you guys being so mean to Naruto? He's always just like, okay, I get why they're mad at you.
Danzo is supposed to be a representation of how far a government will go under the idea that they're doing good for their country. Whether it's overthrowing democratically voted for governments, which we have a PhD in, mind you.
That was all funded by US aid, of which is being defunded. It's like documented that they did that. Back in the day, they used to go full on let me switch out this dictator for the dictator we like, with U.S. aid.
Like Donzo did in The Hidden Rain, massacring any and all groups of minority dissenters, like the city of Philadelphia did in 1985, when they dropped a literal bomb.
I can't speak on that one. I don't know what the fuck that is.
Of a black liberation group by the name of MOVE, killing 11 people, creating a fire that destroyed 61 homes and left 250 children homeless, or using classified information to turn a hurt public against a minority group to rally them together in one cause, like Germany did in the late 30s, or like America is currently trying to do against Hispanics, trans people, or really anybody. Donzo...
Notice he didn't have a specific example of a modern day version of rallying against a specific group of people, rather than just rallying against retards.
In a world where the Democrats now have a 27% approval rating. So explain that to me. And by the way, 11% with independents, I think in the same NBC poll. 11% with independents. I mean, I said this at the end of last year, like, you lost a crazy contest to a crazy person.
Like, there's no actual fight. What rights do you have that I don't? I don't know, but I'm impressed.
Or like America is currently trying to do against Hispanics, trans people, or really anybody. Donzo is a physical representation of how far political scheming will go with the idea that they're doing it for good. And while I feel as though I've really hammered home my point here, Code Geass is literally about freedom fighters. But because they're Japanese and rallying against a very clearly evil government, we don't really call them what they truly are, which is basically terrorists.
That's what they are. Definitionally, terrorist group. Ideologically, none of the terrorist groups think that they're terrorist groups. They all think they're freedom fighters. Hamas, the Houthis, you ask Hassan Piker, all of them are freedom fighters. The thing about Code Geass that he's not going to say is that for the most part, that's what the rebels were. Lelouch himself is not. He's a straight up terrorist. In fact, he's the equivalent of Eren Yeager. I have to do this evil thing so that everybody can be at peace.
Perhaps this is what I've longed for ever since that day. The destruction and loss of everything. That's right. Destruction always comes before creation. And for that goal, even my own conscience must be cast aside. The only path left to me is straight ahead.
Actively uses these people with good intentions that do not want to kill civilians, that want to help people that are
pawns in a chess game,
and then use them and destroy them, and then hope they survive so they can be used later.
Put yourself in the shoes of a country that just got taken over, like Japan, by another bigger country or an empire like Britannia, and think to yourself, I wonder what I would do in that situation. Would you follow in the footsteps of the main character of the story of Code Geass?
Now you might help, like Underground Railroad, house one or two of them, but you're not going to be out there fighting. Lelouch is not the guy to follow, because we know the story. Now, if we don't know the story, then we're going to be as clueless as the freedom fighters were. Because they had no fucking clue. And the second they figured it out, they turned their back on Lelouch.
Did you use your Geass power on Yuffie? Be honest. Yes. You caused her to massacre the Japanese. I ordered her to do it.
Then that whole bloodbath was... Yuffie was just a girl. Zero was in control.
So Zero slaughtered our people for his own ambitions?
Yeah, that recording is fake!
And agreed with the Britannians to bring him in for some leniency and to keep their border state. Or whatever, I forgot what specifically. Obviously, they would have trounced that shit immediately right afterwards. Because they're the fascist government. But that's what they did. Like, actively in the story, if you don't remember that part of the story.
Would you follow in the footsteps of the main character of the story of Code Geass, Lelouch, and battle against this country that doesn't truly have your country's best interests in mind? They're just trying to increase the size of their empire? You probably would. Most people do. And then think to yourself, has America made any promises to try and expand its empire in the last couple of days? Oh yeah, remember when we said—
In a bold address to Congress, Trump calls Greenland vital to U.S. global security, inviting Greenlanders to join America. So he is— let me let him finish the point.
Oh yeah, remember when we said we were gonna take Greenland? Wonder if there's any connection there. But don't worry.
Do you think that he was gonna take Greenland by force?
No.
Or do you think he was gonna buy it like every other state that we've ever had? in the grand scheme of the Louisiana Purchase.
Dude, these Trump jabs are insane.
They're weak. It's even worse. It's like he wants to buy Greenland for a reason. I don't specifically know what it is. I forgot. But it has something to do with being able to ship things fast because Greenland's next to the North Pole, and if you can get boats up there, they can go around the world actually faster than most things. That's something like that. Buying a country is not the same as a literal fascist one militarily taking one over. They retook it. There's an anime on Hulu, Rosé of the Recapture. They do it again.
But don't worry, we don't care about Ukraine anymore, even though it's also going through the exact same thing that happened in Code Geass. A bigger, scarier country.
No, that's not the exact same thing. I forgot how stupid that was.
A bigger, scarier country is currently trying to take over their country, and they're fighting back against it. All in all, this video is made to say that anime has always been political, and your inability to see that does not mean it's not true. Truly engage with the pieces of media that you consume. When your English teacher told you to think about why the curtain would be blue, don't think to yourself, oh, the curtain's just blue. Because guess what? You're probably wrong. And even in the hypothetical universe where the author didn't mean anything by saying that the curtain was blue, the ability to apply your own experience and add meaning to what could be otherwise a meaningless experience is a big part of enjoying literature at its...
That's gonna have one of the most influential and beautifully scripted videos about the transgender experience. I can tell you right now, Windbreaker would have been at the top of my list.
That's called subjectivity, exactly.
Meaning that other people
are allowed to see things other ways.
So think, critique, and understand. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go probably be deported for making this video in the first place.
As a completely white, cis male who's never struggled a day in his life, wow.